I'm even more than I can stand. But starting today, all I'm gonna be is her man. Tough little boys grow up to be dads. They turn into big babies again. It would be easy to blame all these songs about rain.
Well, he's a multi-platinum artist who has had songs on the chart since he first debuted back in 1996. And one of those songs you just saw, Her Man. Welcome to the studio. We are on the record with Gary Allan. Good to see you.
It's great to see you.
So, man, you know, I'm playing these songs and I'm looking at Her Man. I'm like, gosh, 1996. You were singing it. I was playing it.
God,
25 years.
They look so old when I see them, and so young. Yeah.
Such, I love your babies.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to take it back, and I'm so glad you're on the show because I said, you know, I feel like I know so much about you, and then I'm always surprised, but I don't know the early days. You know, I know you had family band, you grew up around music, but talk about growing up in California, La Mirada, California.
La Mirada, yeah.
What was that like?
So I was a little surfer kid. I surfed every day before school. And if you rode in my car, you listened to Merle Haggard or George Jones. And if I rode in yours, good chance I was listening to the Surf Punks or somebody like that. But my family there's always been music in my house. There was always a PA system in the living room. So every day after school, I would go home and I had a giant music book, just with all handwritten songs that I had learned and all the chords to them. And I would just go play for hours after school. And eventually that turned into gigs after school and eventually ended up a house band at a place and eventually got a record contract.
But your family was playing, so you were doing shows with your family and then kind of branched out on your own?
Yeah. My brother and my dad both played. My brother played acoustic guitar. My dad played electric guitar. We played little bars, and we were the Herzberg family.
Happy childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a beaver cleaver childhood. I always tell people like it was perfect. My mom was home all the time, babysat kids. She's awesome. And my dad was a construction guy. And I played bars with my dad. So my mom was very Mormon, still to this day. Never had a drink. She's a saint. And then my dad smoked and drank, and I played bars with him, and they were total opposites. And we're married for 50 years.
It works. Opposites attract, right?
Yeah.
You know, you getting out on your own and playing those gigs, those solo gigs. Obviously, your father was encouraging, so it kind of grew into your own thing. Mm-hmm. People may not know, you were offered a record deal. You were just a kid. How did that even happen?
Way back there, I was 15. Wow. It was with A&M Records, and one of my uncles knew Herb Albert, I think is how it worked.
Really?
Yeah, so somehow we were able to get music to him. They offered a development deal, and then my dad said, absolutely not, I'm not going to sign that. He used to say that you need to play for the people that love you, the people that hate you, and the people that could care less, and you'll find yourself in there somewhere.
Good advice.
It was. He used to say I would imitate people if you got a record contract right now. And he was right. I imitated Merle Haggard and George Jones and all the people that I loved. I probably didn't find myself until right before I got a record deal, and I was in a house band, and then eventually it became so not old hat, but easy just to play a song and not think about how I was going to do that song. I could just take the song and play it. And I think that's where I kind of found myself. There was no longer this, who am I, how am I going to do it? I just did it. And I got very comfortable in that. And that was right about the time when I got a deal.
So playing in a house band, this was still out in California?
Yes.
So talk about then finding your way to Nashville. Did people come out to California, and how old were you when that record deal actually happened?
Are you talking about the old one, the 15?
No, the real one. The
So
one that came second. Because I would think at 15, right? I mean, you seem like right now you're like, oh, Dad was right. That was. Yeah. I can't imagine a 15-year-old going, what do you mean?
I was angry.
Is this going to happen?
I didn't want to play in his band anymore.
That's it, Dad. I'm out of your band. I'm
out
not
of here. So the lady that owned the house band. I'm blanking on her name, and I hate that. Anyway, the lady that owned the bar that I was a house band at knew a guy here in town named Byron Hill.
Oh,
and
gosh.
Byron was
songwriter. Google him, by the way. Yeah.
And we asked if I could sing on one of his songwriting demos. So the song was called "If I Was a Drinking Man." It was a Neil McCoy hit, but he had let me sing on that. I put a vocal on it at a friend's house at a studio, sent it back, and then he sent me out the finished product. And we were listening to that finished product all over the dealership. So
So you were working selling cars.
It's hard to keep going back. So I owned a construction company. Byron, who I did this demo with, ended up getting a job at RCA Records, and I thought, I have a record contract now, because he told me he was going to give me a development deal. So I sold my construction company. Byron Hill got fired. My brother told me that I could sell cars at the dealership until I figured out what I was going to do.
How old were you at this point?
25. Okay. I just got out of the Army. Just
so
got
I
divorced.
didn't know you were even in the Army.
Yeah, just got divorced.
Oh my gosh.
And then, anyway, one of the salesmen was
That's
listening.
a lot of life, by the way.
It was. There's a lot that happened in
life.
there. But this woman bought a truck. It was right when that new body style of the Ram Chargers came out. I was working for them. And anyway, came out, bought this car. The lady came back to get it washed a couple weeks later and walked in with a CD, and she goes, "Who's this on this CD?" And I said, "Well, it's mine. It's a songwriting demo." I go, "How'd you get that?" She goes, "It was in the truck." And then she goes, "Who's messing up your song on the radio?" And I started laughing. I said, "Well, usually whoever you hear it first by and you like the song, whoever comes after that, you usually like the first one better." I go, "But that's Neil McCoy." I go, "Mine was just a songwriting demo to get the song to him." And she said, "Well, what's stopping you right now from doing this yourself?" And I said, "I just got divorced." I said, I would like to go to Nashville eventually. And her husband goes, "Well, what's that going to cost?" And I said, "Probably $10,000, $12,000. And then her husband goes, "Write him a check." And
wow.
I remember going, "Hang on, because I don't want to feel like I owe anybody if I don't get a record contract." Right. And they kind of laughed at me and wrote a check for $12,000 and said, "It's not that much money to us. If it can change your life, you should take it." And I did, and I ended up having a record contract 6 months later. I gave them back their $12,000 plus the percentage of the first record, but they owned a gold mine in Alaska and were literally just digging money out of the ground. And I see her every few years. She comes out and gives me a big hug and takes some merchandise. And yeah, how random is that? I owe everything to this woman, Susan Desai.
That is unbelievable. What a story! But
yeah.
You made the leap there. Of course, having the money and getting the deal eventually. I want to talk about your trek to Nashville. What those first few days, maybe first few months were like. So stay with us a lot more. We come back here on the record with Gary Allan.
So I'm just sitting out here watching airplanes take off and fly.
That's Watching Airplanes from Gary Allan, who's our guest here on the record. Thank you guys for tuning in. And that song, by the way, with 2007, you consider that like a signature song for you? I mean,
Airplanes, absolutely. We're closing our show right now with it, so yes.
Yeah. That's one you cannot get off the stage without doing.
Absolutely not, yeah.
Hearing the story before the break, you were talking about how, your record deal came to be. You had money was there. Talk about Nashville coming out to LA to sign you, because there was a story there, because there was one showcase, two showcases, and Decca Records was really the label that was into you, and you liked that deal.
I did. I really wanted to be on Decca. I remember Joe Galante RCA tried to get me to fly out to Nashville and do a showcase in like just a little studio, and I was like, absolutely not. You guys will never understand what I do if you just have me on a little rehearsal stage and a bunch of guys in suits walk in.
That's not your thing.
Yeah, you're never going to get what I get. You're going to have to come out to LA. And so I said no. They kind of laughed and were like, well, that was first. And anyway, so I set up a showcase at Fred Reiser's place in Anaheim called The Crazy Horse. And I had RCA there, B&A. We had Decca Records flew out. And we had this big showcase. So then after, I remember I walked back into my little dressing room, and Mark Wright had walked in behind me and then gave the bouncer at the door like $50, and he goes, "Don't let anybody else come in here." And
he was working.
And then he turned around and go, "I want to make a record, man. Me and you. Do we have a deal?" And I went, "Well, you can offer a deal." I don't know what a deal is, so yeah. But anyway, I really wanted to be with Mark Wright because of Mark Chestnut's records. I was a huge Mark Chestnut fan, and I wanted that sound sonically. So he had me all the way, yeah. And then Sheila Shipp, that was my first record deal.
And you knew that, and I had said for folks at home, that's called a label block, for better
no
words.
doubt.
That's the word. But you were so. I think what we love about you as music fans is that you know who you are, and I feel like you have always known that. After that record deal at 15 years of age, you really kind of locked in on who you were. I like the idea that people, when they get the deal, immediately, right, I got to be in Nashville. You did not do that.
No, I was an LA guy. I tried to make it work there, but it turned out that all of the connections and everybody that I was dealing with was in Nashville. And to try to tour out of California, everything was 2 days to get over the Rockies. To put it simply, Nashville's within like 600 miles of 80% of the venues that everybody plays. That's why it's a good place to tour out of.
Right. So you came here, landed here after a couple of years. So you were already established, right? So not a home
Had a
initially.
couple of records, didn't have a manager, didn't have an agent. I didn't have anything for the first few singles. I did everything myself. And then I talked John Lytle into quitting. He was the head of promotion at MCA Records. And I talked him into quitting and being my manager.
And you've been with him ever since.
Yeah, and same with William Morris. I never had a contract with William Morris. I remember talking to him, and I said, if we can't shake hands and agree on what we're doing, then I'd rather not do business. And he said, I agree, and that was that. So everybody's got a handshake deal, and that's how we do business.
Yeah, and you were with Decca Records, and we're going to talk a little bit more like this, but Decca then did fold into MCA Records,
Yes.
and you've been with that label for 25 years. Your changes just happened. We're going to talk about that. But more on the fact that you were a guy who knew who you were, not only sonically, but with your image. And I want to talk about when you first came out. I think Use Heart for Sale, when that came out, I said, my God, that cover, you know, the songs that you were doing, the videos that you were doing, you had the nudie suit, am I saying it? I mean, that image, that mattered to you. And you didn't see a lot of guys, especially then, and especially today. I mean, that doesn't seem to come into play.
And there was this bad stigma of a hat act that I walked into that I didn't realize was happening here in town. But it's because I wasn't part of this town. Everything I did had a very LA
kind of Bakersfield.
Dwight, Bakersfield, yeah, that kind of slant.
I want to talk about your father, and I know you lost him in 2008. You were established. He saw the success. What did he say to you? What was the advice?
He was just mostly proud. Like once it all started to happen, you know, in the beginning, he was trying to make sure I didn't get with anybody too young, because I wouldn't get to develop. But he liked it more than I did. So him and my mom, even right before I had a record contract, they were at every show that I ever did. They loved to go dancing. They were two-steppers. So my dad just couldn't have been more proud, and I couldn't have been more proud because he used to play in barn dances when he was young, and. Yeah.
Did he come to a lot of the shows?
He did. Yeah. He did. He came to as many as he could, and loved it, and I loved having him there.
Well, I want to stick around with you, and I want to hear, you know, this is a guy, I like to say, there's that phrase, 10,000 hours to become an expert. You put the time in a lot of stuff outside of the music business, and I want to talk about those other interests. A lot more with Gary Allan when we come back. Learning a lot with him. Stay with us.
Well, I hear what you're telling me, but I've got all the proof I need. It ain't the whiskey.
Welcome back to On the Record, hanging out with Gary Allan and learning a lot about a career that I thought I knew everything about, but then revealing little tidbits. I want to go back to image-wise and how important that was for you when you first started out and playing in those nudie suits. You eventually would open up a clothing store for a brief time here in Nashville. My understanding is that you got into making your own jewelry, and when I say, I always feel weird saying that, but I mean, because you were, working with the metals and these stones, was it through the clothing store or did you have that in mind prior?
It was. Okay. Well, I've always kind of wanted to be a jeweler, but I had the opportunity. We had a guy there named the Silversmith. His company was called the Silversmith, but I talked him into teaching me how to cast silver and gold. So he taught me how to do that at his house. And then on a Black Friday, oddly enough, I had called this jewelry supply company and I said, I want you to set me up a complete shop, production shop, you know, the jewelry benches, the casting, you know, equipment and all that. So I got all this stuff in my house, and then I had to call him back and go, okay, I don't know how any of this stuff works. And he said, where are you from? I said, Nashville. And he said, well, you have like one of the best schools in the country there called New Approach. So I went there and I learned how all of the microscopes and the bench worked, and eventually took a stone setting class, and my daughter took one of their like master classes. In fact, she just took a CAD class this week. But yeah, they just completely helped us build our little jewelry company, and now we put out 60, 70 pieces a month.
Wow, this is can't even say a side hustle at this point.
It's a business.
This is a business.
Yeah. I hardly work up there at all anymore, but my daughter is up there 5 days a week.
I have to mention, you have gifted me, and I'm so thankful for the eagle talon that you had made that I loved. And with my birthstone, also through a friend of mine, you were able to design this ring that I will never not have on, which is just something that I just cherish, the loss of my dog back in November. But you were able to design this, and her birthstone was a diamond. You put the diamond where the heart is and the paw prints, and it's just beautiful. I mean, you literally can do anything, and people are asking you for specific things at this point, and you pretty much can design it. I mean, from a guy who went from not knowing to having all this equipment and learning the 10,000 hours to become an expert, and now you are. That's pretty impressive.
That was a lot of years ago, but now everything is... yeah, we can make anything custom now. It's pretty cool. It's fun. Well, I usually just do things for friends now.
Well, I am glad that you consider me a friend, because I love this ring so much, and I love, of course, having you here as well. We go back way back, so it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. You're going to stick around because there's another thing that I want to talk about outside this. Another, I don't know if it's a hobby of yours outside the music business, but a lot more with this guy. I thought we could go ahead and play one of your videos. Can we do it?
Sounds great. Let's watch.
Let's go ahead and do it. Here's Gary Allan. Every storm runs out of rain.
Well, so you're standing in the middle of the thunder and lightning. I know you're feeling like you just can't win, but you're trying. It's hard to keep on keeping on when you're being pushed around. Don't even know which way is up. You just keep spinning down, round, down. Every storm runs out of rain, just like every dark night turns into day. Every heartache will fade away, just like every storm runs out of rain. So hold your head up and tell yourself that there's something more, and walk out that door. Go find a new rose, don't be afraid of the thorns, 'cause we all have thorns. Just put your feet up to the edge, put your face in the wind, and when you fall back down, keep on remembering. Every storm runs out of rain, just like every dark night turns into day. Every heartache will fade away, just like every storm runs out of rain. Set you free. Every storm runs out of rain, just like every dark night turns into day. Every heartache will fade away, just like every storm runs out of rain. Set you free. It's gonna run out of pain and set you free.
What a great song. #1, taking us back with that. Every storm runs out of rain. Gary Allan in the studio with us. This is On the Record. Before the break, before the video, that is, I was talking about you making your own jewelry and casting your own jewelry. This is a big business of yours. 10,000 hours to become an expert. You picked up the camera, and I mean, photography. You went to Africa. There are pictures in your home that are gorgeous. You get serious about stuff. Talk about, I mean, have you always been that guy?
I love to learn, and I'll always go extreme into doing it. So when we were going to, one of my good friends did this trip, and he said, if I can give you any advice, get a camera and document it with a nice camera. So I call Eric Atkins, who does all of my photography, and said, hey, will you come and show me how to use one of these cameras. So I bought the camera, he said, and then we took some pictures, and I was like, that isn't it. I want it to look like National Geographic. And he started laughing. He goes, well, you're going to have to buy like this camera then. So I went and got the camera that he told me to get and all the giant lenses and stuff like that. And then he worked with me for probably a week and a half, just because I wanted to use it on manual, not automatic. I wanted to be making my own. I wanted to do it. And so anyway, he worked with me for a week or two, and I got amazing, beautiful shots. And that was probably a year ago, and I bet I could not drive that camera today.
But you did it when it counted.
I did it for my 10 days that mattered.
There's that line in the tree, and I'm sitting there going, man, I hope that's a zoom on that lens.
Right. I got some crazy pics. I'm going to make a table book. I started to, but then we got into COVID, and I never did it. But I will do it because I want to see them all come to life. We got to see some really magic things. You did, yeah. Beautiful work, by the way. As I mentioned, 25 years with MCA. You have now left. You are now with 30 Tigers. We've got new music coming. Yes. I mean, yeah. Starting the whole process over again right now. So just started writing with friends and making contacts because it's been a minute since I've made a record. So just deciding who's going to be on it and all that. And taking some time. We're looking forward to that, of course. We don't want to ask, this is a guy, of course, like I said, since 1996, you have been on the charts, on the countdown, just nonstop. And I think just when you think, what else could you possibly look to do in this business, you just played Gillette Stadium for the first time. I did, a couple of days ago. Like 50,000 people. What was that like? It was crazy. It's been a crazy run. The weekend before that, I did a private party for 40 people, and then we played for 50,000, and it's crazy the contrast that's going on in my life just the last few weeks. But all the Luke Combs shows have been crazy. He's the nicest guy. His crew is so cool. I saw you post that his crew is just, that matters. That matters. It does. I don't want to talk about anybody. It would blow you away how many people make this hard. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. He's not one of them, right? I feel like you're in such a great place. You're engaged, you're making new music, you got a new deal. I just feel like happy guy right now. I mean, just happy, enjoying life. Life's in a great spot. And a good balance, because you also take the time, not only are you touring on a crazy schedule, but you get down to the British Virgin Islands. We do. We always make sure I'm always having a good time. Yeah. Good for you. I just love what you do. Thank you for sharing your talents, your stories. Always a pleasure. Good to be here. Very much so. Gary Allan, everybody. Thank you for watching On the Record, and we'll see you next time.